So welcome to episode 25. We're recording the week of August 15th, and yeah, we got a few different things we want to walk through today. Eric's pulled some information on the study out of Purdue University in concert with Stack Overflow. Actually, I don't know much about that. It's be interesting. And yeah, actually a whole bunch of random things. Some new features on ChatGPT Plus. Also, we're talking about PayPal's big announcement this week about Stablecoin. There's also some news out of Amazon that they're going to be leveraging sort of the aggregation of reviews to provide summaries to people about, like, there's oftentimes FAQs in different products, and so it relates to that. But yeah, Eric, let's get it started, man. Tell me about this study.
Yeah, so I think it was just released today or at the earliest this week, yesterday. A study from Purdue University where they were analyzing ChatGPT's responses to questions from Stack Overflow. How would you describe? You worked for Stack Overflow, so how would you describe it to somebody who's not a developer?
Stack is Google for software engineers, I think is the easiest way to say it. What it really is it's almost like Reddit, or it's a forum that people ask questions that are categorized with tags. So if you're asking a question about Java, you tag it with Java. If you're asking a question about JavaScript, which is a very different language, you tag it with JavaScript. And then with all the different libraries and frameworks, you then get more granular with each of those tags just to index that information the same way that a library has indexing systems. And you ask a question, and by tagging it, you then have users who are super users and Stack Overflow enthusiasts who come in and provide answers to you. Or oftentimes they'll come in and moderators actually oftentimes will come in and they'll say, your question's redundant. Here's the question that was already answered X days ago. Here you are. And then close the question.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a great resource for software engineers is what it really is.
Yeah, and super awesome, I think, for people who are newish, or even not people who are newish, but are running into an issue and they search for the issue that they're running into while they're coding, and boom, they find a conversation about it that answers it, saves them a lot of time. So the study that they did, they analyzed the responses to 517 questions that they found on Stack Overflow. They sent them to ChatGPT. And kind of the big headline was, this Purdue study showed that, or found that, ChatGPT was not good at writing or generating code. So they found 52% of ChatGPT's answers contained inaccuracies, 77% of the answers were verbose, and 54% of the errors seemed to arise from ChatGPT not grasping the concept of the question. And so their final conclusion is ChatGPT is proficient at answering general questions, but struggles with coding related queries, which I found interesting.
My impression? Yeah, can I tell you my impression? Is your assumption that they could have trained it to have better foundational understanding of what engineering is, and then asked these questions and expected better responses? Is that that's the glaring error in the study?
Yeah, that's the big one. The questions that they put in were for kind of this community where people are answering your questions, or you're kind of like putting out a line. The questions aren't optimized for an LLM one. They're probably not written super well. I mean, I've done a lot of coding with ChatGPT, and what I've learned is you don't get an answer to your question. You create a conversation where you're learning and trying out different things and responding with what you're finding. And it's exceptional at that. It's really good at writing code. I dug in a little bit deeper, and it looked like they were using 3.5. So I think this study, maybe they started months ago. I don't know. It doesn't look like they specifically were using 3.5 or GPT-4, which is the most updated reasoning model. And they didn't try code interpreter, which is specifically, which is built to.
That's so surprising.
Yeah. So I think the headline's good and it's a catchy headline, but to me,
exactly,
ChatGPT is exceptional at writing code. And I think the idea that you could ask it a question from a completely different platform that is not optimized for what ChatGPT is, which is you try to give it as much context on one specific problem. You can put in entire bits of code, like a lot of code, and it'll run through all of it and give you feedback on it. And it can spit out, rather than Stack Overflow, where you ask a question, you could be waiting days for an answer. Possibly you're getting automatic answers that you can build off of in real time. It's more than proficient at coding related queries. So, I'm definitely biased, but I have a lot of firsthand experience. I've coded a lot of things with it, and it's awesome. Specifically GPT-4. I mean, if somebody's watching this who's like not paying for Plus, but they want to write code, you should just pay $20 a month so you can code like instantly. It's incredible.
Yeah, seriously. That's so interesting. Yeah, it's a catchy headline, I guess. I didn't see it, but yeah,
Yeah.
it is what it is, I guess. I'm a little bit surprised that's the conclusion they came to, but
Well, it's something I've seen kind of I've seen a lot of people talk about. They're like, I don't think ChatGPT is that great. And I think it stems from this idea that, and you and I've talked about it, where you're like, you said in this podcast where I realized it wasn't a database, it's a reasoning engine. And then I'm not going there looking for a specific answer. I'm working through a problem in tandem with it. Uh, it shows people saying that, and then specifically like the way they kind of ran the study to me shows there's still such a lack of understanding of the best ways to use it. And I think, anybody paying attention has a leg up because they can use it in a way that people don't. We talked about it this week. You used code interpreter for like some really awesome data science and data analysis that even somebody who is decent in the field might not be able to figure out for a while. And you can do it in 30 minutes. Like
less 5 minutes. I was able to we had a discussion going on internally with a client about some specific metrics we wanted to dial in on. And it took us like a week to come to any sort of conclusion. And it was just it's anticlimactic until I plugged in these spreadsheets into Code Interpreter and just started asking natural language questions, giving it context on what this is, explaining what some of the columns are, and then asking it questions of it. It was amazing. It took me 10 minutes, not even. It was
yeah,
incredible.
yeah, which is so cool. And
Yeah.
just bringing it back to this, like if you are on Stack Overflow, you might be like, I have a spreadsheet that I need to do these things on. Does anybody know how I could do that? Whereas if you're in Code Interpreter, you might be like, this is specifically what columns A, B, C are, and these are the specific sort of things. You have to be more descriptive, but the answers and the speed are incredible.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So I've gone through the first 10 pages of 50 questions on Stack Overflow, and the oldest question is 3 hours old. So that was the
Yeah.
first thing that stood out to me here, is that this question, it looked at 517 questions. That's so few questions. And also it assumes that they're actually asked in a sensible way. You made the point that maybe they're not great English, and that's a really good point. A
Yeah.
lot of these people don't know what they're asking. They're asking a question because they're stuck, and they're ultimately asking a question that they might not know how to frame correctly. And that's where a lot of this institutional knowledge comes in, and these super users who come in, they do it altruistically, but they also do it. They get points for answering questions and then having upvoted answers. And so there's sort of a weird incentivization. It's not weird as much as just there's no monetary success in that. You can provide, oftentimes with engineering and especially for ICs, you'll see somebody Stack Overflow rating on their resume, but
Yeah.
it's not super common. I mean, for ICs, I guess it would be, but GitHub would be more common just because you can actually see the amount of commits somebody's making. But nonetheless, I don't know. This study just seems. I mean, I'm not really sure. You could find whatever you want. I find it incredibly useful, and the code interpreter itself, from like a data perspective, like we said, is like I don't know how I don't know how I lived without it.
Yeah, it's so cool. I know. It's funny to see things that you're like, I'm actually using this, and this feels like such a wrong conclusion.
Yeah, it
Like,
makes me feel kind of like I'm an idiot. It's like what?
yeah, I know. It's funny to kind of see, look ahead to where these people will change their mind in a few years. They're gonna
Yeah,
be like, oh shit, man. I read one study and I was like, I'm not gonna use that for coding anymore when I could have been building dope stuff for all this time.
yeah. This relates to a conversation. Like I just anecdotally, I had a conversation this week with somebody who was very skeptical of AI. They weren't even saying AGI. They were just saying AI. And I was asking, "Oh, do you use ChatGPT?" She's like, "No, I can't for work." So interesting. You ever used a plugin? No, I can't for work. My computer's too old. But it's a web app. You definitely can. As we discuss these things, it just became really clear that they don't really try. And so there's these
Yeah.
massive, easy assumptions to make. Like anything, you're able to just pass judgment and ignore something because because it's a foregone conclusion that you won't like it or that it's not useful. And she was very afraid of it. She found it scary. She thought that it was something that there's so much potential for negative, and I just don't really. That's not my perspective, and that's really clear that it's not our perspective. I think that there's a lot
Yeah.
more positive here than negative, and also it's a tool, right? I mean, a hammer is also dangerous, but it allows you to build build things.
That's
So, you know, so,
yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I've just had to. I think that it's
You
much
build a
more
house or you
nuanced.
kill a human, man.
Exactly. Yeah, get that hammer out of you. You should make it illegal. She said, yeah, there needs to be a lot more regulation. I said, well, what do you suggest? And she just was like, well, it needs to be like much harder to build with it. I said, well, but why? Like, I'm not sure that I understand how that's productive. So I just think that there's massive assumptions that are very easy to make around the fact or the idea that it's scary. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I just tend, we both, obviously we preach to the choir here.
Yeah.
But that means that there's opportunity, right? I think it's good. I mean, we had put together the most recent pod and shipped it, I think, this morning, and that was in the description. Is that this is one of the things we discussed last week was the fact that there's a lot of opportunity for people who want to build right now
Yeah.
because there's a lot of skepticism, and this is really the time for it. So
Yeah.
there's a lot less competition now than there will be in the future, I guess.
Yeah. I was scared like 2 months ago of ever really divulging any information because I was like, everybody's gonna build everything before I get the chance to do like, if I have an idea for something, somebody's gonna steal it. When in reality, 99.9% of people aren't even trying, like, the stuff enough to realize how much potential there is. Uh,
Yeah,
so let's just
that's
start
interesting.
giving out fucking gems of information for free.
Yeah, dude, I see. Oh, yeah, exactly. I also think it's easy to assume that the information, like, there was a big misconception that they had relayed during that conversation that I did not call out, but it stood out to me. And they had said that they had spoken to somebody at OpenAI, and the person was quick to say, "We delete the data after 7 days. Like, this is not something that we're trying to retain." And that's something that we've read about. It was kind of a big thing when it initially had been rolled out. Big countries in Europe had said, "No, get out of here. What are you doing with this information?" And they had sent people there to make sure that they can conform with the requests and make them a reality. It's really very accommodating. This is a business that has every interest in. They're not a nonprofit, despite the name. They're not an open source organization. This is a company that wants to stay in business. They want to conform with these regulations, and they want to help to shape it for good or bad. And I don't necessarily think that there's necessarily a negative um, incentive for these guys. And so I tend to give them benefit of the doubt. But the idea here was that you need to retain the data because we need to know what these people are doing. If people are trying to learn how to dissolve a body, we need to know that. And that assumes that there isn't an automatic trigger within the first 7 days to have keyword searches, and you can't just immediately know that. And you
Yeah,
need to look back on it. The idea that data is, you need to parse through the data and it takes tons of time is archaic.
yeah.
Um, that's like,
It's
that makes
wild.
me think of learning about SQL databases and relational databases and having to like query on the command line how to figure out what's in the database because it's
Yeah,
not visually represented. But then when you look at tools like, that's the innovation of these cloud services, that they allow for you to not only have the databases themselves, and databases were open source a long time ago with, I don't know, it's a very long story, but ultimately that to me was like, you're just fundamentally talking about something so different. Like, if there's a keyword search that's coming up, it's going to become very obvious very quickly that somebody's searching how to dissolve a human body. You don't need 7 days or plus of data retention in order to know that. So I don't
yeah.
know.
It's actually that goes perfectly into another bullet point I had to talk about, which is today they announced they're opening up the GPT-4 for content moderation endpoint. So you can build people who work for digital platforms who do things. So when you ask ChatGPT how to dissolve a body, it'll tell you, I can't answer that. You shouldn't murder anybody. But
Yeah, exactly.
the way that they've done that, and there was a big thing at the beginning when ChatGPT came out of people sharing, trying to get it to tell them how to hack into stuff. And they've built these moderation tools where the model that ChatGPT is trained on, like, knows that it's not allowed to talk about that. And the way they do that is a mix of the model getting trained on certain rules and then humans like letting them know whether they're following the right rules or not. And it slowly starts to get to the same way where it would moderate it based on what your rules for your platform would be.
Hmm.
So they have a cool video, one of which is like the way that this is developed is you'd have a set of rules, and then you would have a moderator answer, like, which one of these would you allow? And then if the model doesn't match those, like if it allows how to dissolve a body through, you would mark it as no, and then this is the reason why, and the model would take that in. So then you keep asking it the question until it starts to answer it the same way the moderators would. And it's cool the way that they're pitching this is it puts consistent labels on content, faster feedback loops for people, and for projects. Like if you update the policy of Facebook and you have this, you can train it in that way we just talked about, where a moderator and a model work together to make sure they're on the same page. They can do that way faster than it would take to get all those things implemented with a bunch of human moderators. Yeah, and then it reduces the burden on humans. Like there was a lot of talk about this years ago, but like people who moderated at Facebook or YouTube having to watch just like the worst videos of all time to kick them off. And there's ways that this makes it way easier on humans, and it makes life a lot easier on tech companies, and people don't have to watch like beheading videos every single day for work. It's like an easy one to figure out.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, I think
Instead
it's
of using the, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No.
I think it's an interesting use case for what AI is, and it's a very low-hanging fruit way to implement it in online for a lot of different, social companies, or really anything that has people posting to it. Where normally, we use these things every day, like Twitter or any social media company, really,
Mm-hmm.
or news outlets too, or like crowdsource news stuff. And it gives them a real world application that people can start playing around with, and makes things way more efficient, which I think is cool.
Absolutely. Is this a tool that should be, this is using the API and using it as a, tell me how this actually works. It's not within the chat itself. So this is leveraging the API.
This is literally leveraging OpenAI's API with
Cool.
GPT-4. So I haven't played around with what it actually looks like to like plug it into something. I don't really build things that need to be moderated, but yeah, it's a little bit
Cool.
more technical. It's not like a plug and play thing. You have to actually, similar to fine tuning, I think.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Cool.
yeah. So they have the kind of this iterative process that you do with it.
Cool. That's awesome. This relates. I'd seen a headline yesterday. I read, there's a quick article in TechCrunch about Amazon taking all of the reviews for items, for a specific item, and sort of like taking all that crazy disparate information from different users, different tones and different explanations, good and bad and neutral, and using those as the information that it can pull from for people to ask specific questions of it. How comfortable is this? Or does this float? Or things like that. Instead of having to ask a Q and then have a question and then an answer, um, or even to pre-populate those things and have to guess what people are going to ask, what the frequently asked questions should be. What this allows for is it leverages the existing responses and reviews that already are there to provide to have a data set of information about the product that you then can query, and ask really simple questions about the product from those reviews, like
Yeah.
abstracting that information away. It's pretty interesting, pretty cool use case. Like pretty common. This is one of the most common ones that we're seeing. We usually talk about it in terms of internal documentation.
Yeah.
Somebody wants to take all their internal docs and allow for somebody to ask natural language questions of it, because maybe things aren't sort of like framed in a way that are, maybe there's not a table of contents, and you have a hard time finding information.
Yeah.
And this is sort of similar to that, but this is for a company that has probably hundreds of thousands, if not well over half or three quarters of a million reviews, maybe way more. I have no idea. Maybe more than a million reviews on Amazon. It's a
Oh,
pretty interesting way to leverage that information. It's cool.
yeah. Yeah, it's super cool. Like, if you search Google how to dissolve a body, and then you're trying to find the right tub, but you need some users. No, it is really cool. It would be cool if they could link to the reviews too. So like you ask a question and you actually want to verify that, be like, oh, this person liked, the way that this chair packs, or like if you're like, I need a chair that's good for backpacking. I could see it even going into more of a search feature where you're specifically, I'm searching for a backpacking chair that's lightweight and compact, and then it pulls through the reviews and you can get the products with the actual like summary of what the review said about it, like super quick, which is
That's a cool
cool.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the article really, it was very short. It was the sort of thing that didn't have much detail. I don't know that it even linked to a press release from Amazon. And so I think it's a little bit more of a headline, like we had discussed earlier from Purdue, but in the opposite sense, it's like, oh, this is a big company that's leveraging AI.
Yeah.
AI is the shit right now.
Yeah.
And then the other end of the spectrum, which is just as popular a headline, is this isn't actually that impressive, and it's just another piece of like you certainly completely useless tooling from
Yeah.
tech bros. So I think that the truth obviously lies somewhere between those two, but I don't really know that Amazon, because our buddy works at Amazon, and I spend a lot of time with him, and I'm with him a lot. And they can't use ChatGPT internally. I was on the phone last night. I actually had dinner last night with a buddy of mine who works at Google, the Googs, and they
Mhm.
don't use, he doesn't really use Bard at all,
Yeah.
like almost never. And he's a creative writer. So
Interesting.
I know it's fascinating. So yeah, I think Amazon. Yeah, it's cool. I think it'd be a good use case as a consumer. I don't use Amazon a lot, but I mean,
Yeah.
I know
I
some
kind
people
of
that
am
do.
averse to it, mainly because of I heard so many stories, and I had a cousin who worked at one of their warehouses, but around all the union busting and the way that they treat warehouse employees to get all the prices that they do seems like over optimized and not actual good business practices in the way I see them. So I've always been kind of averse to using it, even though it is mad convenient. And I know people who fucking live by it.
Same.
Yeah. And I did shop at Whole Foods the other day for something. So I guess I technically did shop at Amazon.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty interesting. Yeah, I don't really know. I have definitely felt that way in the past, but I know that for a lot of brands, Amazon is the main channel. I just know that from a publishing perspective, they really changed that world. And I
Yeah.
don't know that you can make an argument that it's for the better. I think that I try my very best to use bookshop.org, which actually just goes across the United States for bookshops that then send you the books instead of ordering them from some warehouse from Amazon, or
Yeah.
go to the Strand in New York City or different bookshops, or independently owned bookshops, just because in the same way that it's fun for us to build a business, it's also fun for people to build old school businesses like you know
Yeah.
books. It's cool. So
I'm with you. You can also buy a lot directly from publishers, which is cool.
true. It's a good point.
And I've used Thrift Books before, which is a secondhand like online bookstore.
Oh, cool.
Like, yeah, but I'm with
Nice.
you. I don't really like the the way they've made book publishing. So
Yeah.
yeah,
All
stay
right,
away.
enough of this doom and gloom. I don't mean to talk shit about Bezos. I'm gonna get shot in the back of the head somehow.
Yeah,
The
you just need a little
spaceship's gonna. Yeah, exactly.
Oh man,
Um,
let's touch very briefly because we're at like 23 minutes. But PayPal, one of
yeah,
the biggest financial services provider in the world, announced that they're launching a crypto stable coin this week, which was kind of out of the blue, um, and is we're in the market that we're in where people aren't talking about crypto, and we talk about it way less just because there's not a whole bunch of exciting things happen. Pretty crazy. Um,
yeah, certainly. It's something. I mean, I was also having a different conversation with somebody. Crypto comes up much less often. Um, I'm still just as. I mean, I'm still just as sure that Bitcoin is not going anywhere as I was 9 months ago, as I was when I first heard about it in 2015. 7 years ago. So um, I'm very, very sort of. I take the long vision. I take the internet native vision on that personally, as we've discussed countless times, and so that's unwavering. I think that a lot of financial organizations understand the implications of instantaneous finality, and they want to be a part of that. I was a little bit surprised to read that PayPal obviously is probably a household name. Probably every single person knows about PayPal because they also allow for you to do international settlement. But that
yeah,
international settlement is not instantaneous. So that's worth noting. But ultimately, they have 430 plus million users. So that's a lot of people. And they built this
yeah,
on Ethereum. So it allows for instantaneous And when I say instantaneous, it means that like I could pay Eric right now and he could go in 5 minutes to the pizzeria and use that money that I sent to him because it's his. It's not that it needs to settle through a wire transfer or something like that over the course of several days or a week, depending on your profile, like your financial profile. But yeah, I think it's interesting. I'm a little bit surprised they built it on Ethereum. That to me was a little bit surprising, but
because
I
it's
don't
so
know.
expensive. But
Exactly. Like,
yeah, it is kind of wild. There are a bunch of different layer twos that are built and on top of Ethereum that once you're on Ethereum, you can use those. Most notably, Coinbase launched one called Base like a week ago.
yeah,
Um, so we'll see what happens with it. It'll be interesting to see how they keep the cost of actually sending it to other accounts down. I think natively in their platform, you'll be able to send it around, most likely for free, almost like it was on Coinbase or something, which might be their main use case, to just have these tokens that are backed. And then you can send them to other PayPal users extremely fast and cheap and then use them, like you said. Uh, Super cool for the industry, though. I think, yeah, kind of
I
the
agree.
type of adoption that people really wanted a few years ago when everything was overhyped is like slowly coming to fruition, which is cool.
Yeah, it is cool. It's funny too because there's such a weird connotation or like a negative connotation, I should say, with stable coins because there have been so many examples now, especially for people like us who really know like a thing or two about the industry. There have been so many
Yeah.
examples of things that are called stable coins that aren't actually stable coins.
Yeah.
Most famously, the algorithmic stablecoin movement that
Yeah.
was sort of like
US.
encapsulated, yeah, with encapsulated by UST. So Terra Luna was the name of the organ, like the the cycle, like the two things that were in like Terra was a coin, or UST was the stable coin, but it wasn't actually a stable coin; it's an algorithmic stable coin. And so what it was able to do is actually have a people were able to manipulate the price, and ultimately people who had thought that it was a stable coin and collateralized their UST and taken out loans against it, those loans are very easily liquidated if you manipulate the price below $1. And
Yeah.
so ultimately people lost, I mean, the industry lost, I think with a B, in billions of dollars in a day. It
Yeah.
was very, very interesting to watch. It was March 6th or 9th in 2023.
It was May.
Um, May. That's what it was. Sorry.
Yeah. I
May.
just looked it up because I was like, dude, guess
May
how
9th.
long ago that. Yeah. I thought that was
Yeah.
2 years ago. That was
Yeah.
uh, 15 months ago. It was
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, so that was a very famous one, but there have been others. There have been lots of others, and there are lots of people who are building stable coins because stable coins are such a great use case for like a distributed ledger or a blockchain.
Yeah.
And then there will inevitably be, and in the EU, they're already working on this, and it actually has already pretty much been done, and it's just taking a long time to roll it out. There's going to be a what do they call them? The
CBDC.
yeah, central bank digital currencies.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're going to be in June 2024. There's a rollout in the EU of CBDCs, or at least a CBDC. And so that isn't really like the elegant solution that Bitcoin affords you, which is the separation of state and bank and state and the printing of money. And so that's not
Yeah.
really a solution from that like philosophical economic like study perspective. But what it allows for is the instantaneous finality of transactions in the same way that cash provides.
Yeah.
And so, but it would be digital. And so everybody has a phone already, and everybody, so it's interesting. It's coming. I think that it's something that people sleep on, and it's easy to scoff at crypto in the same way that it's a kind of easy to scoff at AI. And I kind of get it with crypto, and I think that most of it's sort of this very, very insulated little group of people who are mostly guys, like mostly men, and
Yeah.
mostly just trading the same money back and forth with one another. And there are a lot of grifters, but I don't know. In due time, I think that it'll become less and less that way. My thesis a few years ago is that if you could become an expert in that industry in 5 years, which is now 2 years, 3 years from now, almost 3.5 years from now, there will be a high demand for that skill set and that understanding and that history, that historical view and that perspective that you would have. I don't know that I feel as certain of that. I've since done two pivots, but I still think that there's some validity to that. I just
Yeah.
don't know how long it's going to take for that to be actually valuable,
It's true.
but I'm not sure.
Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty warm take, but I think maybe it's time for you to spit a hot take. Otherwise, ice cream.
Oh, in the early episodes, I used to like scream as I laughed because it would like make the headphone distorted. And that was so organic that I just accidentally scream laughed for the first time
I
in like
love
20
it, dude.
episodes.
Bring back the scream laugh.
What
Um,
yeah, what's your hot take?
I have a hot take. I just thought of it and then it went away. Oh, this is so hot. This is going to cause controversy. This is debate. I maybe even shouldn't. I wish there was ChatGPT's moderation tool built in right here so that I wouldn't say it. But uh, during COVID, during 2020, people stopped going to the movie theaters, and I've started going back to the movie theaters more.
Hell
And I
yeah,
gotta
that's
say,
awesome.
it's all right. It's kind of fun to go to a movie theater every once in a while. Granted,
Definitely.
yeah, and watch a shitty movie. I've gone to like two separate movies in the last month and a half, and pretty fun. I think you should get back in the cinema.
I
Test it.
love it, dude. I love the cinema. What's the movie rec you got? Have you seen Eisenhower? That looks good. Or Oppenheimer, excuse me.
I want to see Oppenheimer. It's a
Yeah.
bit of a time commitment, so I got to
Is
carve
it?
out like 3 hours.
Okay.
We saw Barbie, which has been making the rounds. The Barbie movie, which Greta Gerwig directed and I think wrote, it had a surprising twist. It wasn't what you. It's an adult movie.
Oh, I
Uh,
didn't know that.
yeah, and it's got. I'd recommend it just because it's interesting.
No
Uh,
way. I'm surprised. That's cool. I did not expect you to say
yeah,
that.
I saw Barbie. Uh, and then we saw the Meg 2, which is a really bad shark movie with Jason Statham.
Oh.
It's like, yeah, but we've seen Meg 1 and we laughed really hard at how bad it was. And so we were just like looking and Meg 2 was up and we were like, let's go see Meg 2, which involves Jason Statham riding a jet ski with poison dart javelins around three megalodons in the
Yes.
sea outside of China, and it's the most ridiculous, unrealistic thing I've ever seen. But it was
Oh,
pretty
that's
funny.
awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Gosh. Okay. I do love the movies. I love getting the big tub of popcorn in the movie. Um, yeah. Man, I wish I had a good one.
It's all right if you don't have one.
Yeah,
We
this
can
might be
each
the
slide
first week
through.
without one. I
Yeah.
think it's yeah. I don't know. I think it's about.
Maybe maybe your hot takes that it's not good to have hot takes.
Not at all. I think it's great to have hot takes. I just yeah. I don't know. It's been a little bit of a weird week.
Yeah.
I think it's also important to um, this past weekend we did a race. We did an endurance race. And it's important to push yourself physically, and like I was really impressed by some of my brother who performed really well, and there were a couple other people who performed really well. Our buddy performed really well. I did all right. I wasn't, we all finished, which was great. A lot of people didn't finish the race, but all of us did. So yeah, it's 7.5 hours of endurance racing is something Eric's done days, 7 days. I don't know if it's ever been 7 days. It's a long time, but
Been 6 days.
multiple days. Yeah, 6 days at one time running across the state. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think it's important to get yourself out of the zone sometimes and try to focus on something else, despite how ridiculously difficult it can be.
Yeah. I mean, doing 7 hours of anything is
Yeah,
insane. That's
seriously.
yeah. You're pretty much an endurance athlete now. That's
Yeah, maybe one day. Yeah. But yeah, it was awesome. Another week down. Eric's going to be internationally traveling before the next recording, so we'll have a
yeah.
fresh take from my man.
Yeah. Oh, my hot take's gonna be about Sweden, baby. And Sweden, I'm coming for you. It's either gonna be a good hot take or a bad hot take. That's up to you to decide.
Exactly. Awesome. Well, shout out to Eric for being hilarious, and shout out to Josiah Soren for the tunes. And yeah, let's keep it
Yeah.
going. Another week down, episode 25.
See you next time.
Awesome. All right, ciao, buddy.